MicroStrategy is down 58% over the last year. It's been really, really bad. And for the first time in a long time, MSTR right now it was trading below liquidation value. Now it's trading on par around 1 MNAV. And this is historically cheap for the company. It has commanded 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 times NAV. The MNAV premium has pretty much disappeared. And now you're buying it on par. So you could get exposure to Bitcoin and you could get potential price appreciation, more price appreciation, if it ever gets back some kind of a premium 1.2 times, 1.3 times MNAV, which I believe MSTR right now is presenting an asymmetrical kind of bet. It's really hated. There's a lot of bad sentiment around the stock. And since many of you have enjoyed my BitMine video, I decided to talk about MSTR and do a deeper dive on the debt and a few more things. So I really hope you enjoy it. Now, the job of a treasury company, and this is a big one, because a lot of people ask me, why should I buy BitMine if I could just buy Ethereum itself? Doesn't make sense, right? Why would I buy MSTR if I could just buy Bitcoin itself? Well, the job of those treasury companies is they want to create value per share. Just like a regular company would create earnings per share, those treasury companies, they want to create Ethereum per share or Bitcoin per share worth of growth. And MicroStrategy measures it based on something called the Bitcoin yield. Bitcoin itself doesn't have any yield, it's a cryptocurrency, but they measure it in terms of how much they were able to increase their Bitcoin per share after diluting stock. And in the case of MSTR, they increased it 26% over the last year. So if you did buy it at 1 MNAV, let's say, and it held its premium, no premium expansion, no premium contraction, and Bitcoin itself, let's say, went up 20%, you would get an additional 26% worth of returns based on the increase in Bitcoin per share. So this is the advantage of holding a treasury company versus holding Bitcoin or Ethereum itself. And this is why MSTR has outperformed Bitcoin. And I can put up here the chart again and tick out a few boxes. But if you look at the difference between MSTR, or I should say strategy, and Bitcoin, it has outperformed Bitcoin by about 500%. MSTR has returned 1,178. Bitcoin has returned 676% since 2020. So that's a pretty decent outperformance. And this is after the MNAV premium has collapsed. Before that, MSTR was up 3,500%. So that's a pretty decent outperformance if you ask me. Now, there's many ways those treasury companies raise capital for them to be doing, creating Ethereum per share or Bitcoin per share. The way MSTR used to do it is they mainly issued convertible debt at a premium, then they take the debt at a 0% coupon or very low interest rate, they take it and they start buying Bitcoin and they create more Bitcoin per share worth of value. But recently they got into something else, which is preferred equity, and this is a fancy word that I don't like to use, which is digital credit. And it's the whole fact that strategy has invented something that has never been invented before, and it's called digital credit. And it's just really a fancy word for preferred equity. That's what it really is. And what MSTR started doing is they started putting up a lot of preferred equity in STRF, STRC, and STRK. And those are different public companies, you could say. MSTR would take them public. They would take the proceeds and they would use the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. But MSTR is responsible for paying the dividend on those preferred shares. For example, STRF has a 10% dividend. MSTR has to pay the 10% dividend. STRC has a 10.5% dividend. This is a popular one. They have to pay the 10.5% dividend. Now, the advantage of that for MicroStrategy is they never really have to repay the whole debt. If they're taking out a convertible, if they don't want to dilute stock, if they don't want to take on the debt, once they issue the preferred equity, this is, you could say, a permanent loan or permanent capital. They never have to repay back the capital. All they have to do is pay the dividend or pay the interest, which in this case is a little bit high, but this is why the company has done it. Now, I'm not a big fan of that at all. I really don't like it. And I could show you an example with STRC, which is another one of those preferreds, you could say, and it pays a 10.4% dividend, which really is amazing. And the biggest problem with STRC and a lot of those instruments is once they go below a NAV. So let's say, for example, if STRC is trading at 100 and it goes under $99 for 5 days, MSTR would have to increase the dividend. And because they have to increase the dividend to maintain the yield, it's going to increase their dividend or interest obligations. And it's a never-ending cycle. You could see how they have to keep raising the dividends. They had to keep raising it. And that's really, really bad. And I actually prefer Bitmine over MSTR because I like how Bitmine does not have any debt. If it's trading at a premium to MNAV, they issue shares at a premium and then they buy Ethereum. If it trades at a discount, they sell Ethereum or use the cash to buy back the stock and they create Ethereum per share. It's very simple. But the way MSTR is doing it, it's dangerous and it's much more complicated than what Bitmine is doing. Now, the only problem is that MSTR doesn't generate any revenues. It's a treasury company. So how are they going to keep paying the 10.5% coupon and all this debt? And it's a lot of debt, about, I believe, $8.8 or $8.9 billion. Well, they do have a software business. The software business is growing around 10% year on year. Subscriptions have been growing 65% year on year. So the subscription part of the business has been growing. But if we look at the latest income statement, and this is again the latest quarter, we could look at the total gross profit. Gross profit was about $90 million, okay? Then they have sales and marketing, $29 million, research and development, 22, general administrative around 38, and $90 million in gross profit is wiped out. So the software company is enough for them to maintain regular obligations and basic expenses, but it's not enough for them to be paying the dividend, which is why MSTR has issued a lot of equity recently for them to build up a cash position. Now they have $2.2 billion in US dollar reserves, which is just like they have a Bitcoin reserve, they have a dollar reserve to satisfy the dividend. The annual dividend for now, they're going to have to raise it later on, but for now, it's $831 million, which would be a total coverage, I believe, of 32 months. So the cash as of now is enough to cover the dividend for 32 and a half months. And after 32 and a half months, MSTR is going to have to issue equity again for them to be able to pay the dividend, or they're going to have to issue more preferreds for them to be able to either pay the dividend or to be able to buy more Bitcoin. And that's really not a good setup at all. I mean, I honestly prefer the Bitmine system over the MSTR system. But the biggest problem with this system is for them to issue equity, for it to be accretive, you need a massive MNAV premium. But the MNAV premium has collapsed. There's pretty much no premium. So what happens if MSTR trades at 90 cents on the dollar, if it trades at 0.90 in terms of a MNAV? What if that happens? In this case, if the company is issuing shares, they're destroying shareholders by 10% if they're issuing at 90 cents on the dollar. It no longer becomes accretive, and the whole business model becomes unsustainable. So for this business model to be sustainable, you have to have an MNAV premium. If you don't have one, then it's going to be bad, and that would force MSTR to potentially sell Bitcoin for them to be able to satisfy the dividend obligations, or for them to buy back stock. And if they're selling Bitcoin, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Bitcoin, not just selling pressure, but also a lot of confidence in general that the CEO of the largest treasury company is selling Bitcoin because he has so much debt that he can't cover. So while the preferreds make sense in terms of a permanent capital base that they don't have to repay, the interest expenses are getting out of hand, and they have to keep raising the dividend every time the prefers trade below 100. And that's over the long term not sustainable. It's not good at all. Again, they're covered for 32 and a half months as of now, but in the future, if there's no excitement in the market, if strategy does not trade above 1 MNAV, if it trades at a discount, they're going to have to start selling Bitcoin, which is not the reason why a lot of people have bought, MicroStrategy. But for MicroStrategy, again, if they can sustain it, if they can pull it off, you're gonna get much better returns than buying Bitcoin itself. And they believe the total amplification is 21%. So you are getting the appreciation of Bitcoin in this case. This is an example, but you're also getting the green line, which is mainly them creating more Bitcoin per share. But for them to be able to do that, you need a premium, and now you don't have a premium. So my conclusion on MSTR, it's really a big gamble. It's not really it's not as safe as Bitmine. You could say Bitmine has a staking yield. Bitmine does not have a lot. They have no debt pretty much. It's a different situation than MSTR. MSTR is riskier, but the reward is much, much higher. And if it trades at a discount, it's not too good for the company because they can't issue more, but it would be good for potential shareholders. So for me, I'm keeping an eye on MSTR. And if it goes to 90 cents or 85 cents, then I think it on the dollar, which is 8.5 MNAV, I think it would make sense for me to potentially maybe bet on it and buying Bitcoin at a discount and see if what happens, if something happens and it goes back to par. They recently got back and they remained their position in MSCI, which is great for the company, and that's why it's up 6%. But that's, again, my opinion on MicroStrategy. It was not financial advice. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please press the like button and maybe consider subscribing. So I'll talk to you in another video.